Let's say you find your style. Out of all the aesthetics that we love to throw around, you find something that you think you'll be comfortable in, that you want to invest in, that you'll be wearing for a long time. How do you go about making that happen? I'm a process-oriented person. I'm a production coordinator. That's my day job. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the tools I use and my process to sort of go through the stages of discovery, referencing, categorization, and then implementation. I'm going to use myself as a use case. I have been hyper-focused on this Japanese Americana style. It's been called City Boy, Amekaji, Ametora, and it's essentially the Japanese reinterpretation of Western classics. I'm going to start off talking about some of my favorite Instagram accounts. So I have influencers, I have some brands, and I have some publications. The first one is Nicholas Euthanon Shalmo. He is the designer for Sillage, I think designer, creator, creative director, and he has an amazing Instagram account. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. I love his outfits. It's not exactly my style, but I do find myself to be like really inspired by what he wears. I think it's on the level of art. I found him because I love his brand Sillage so much, and I believe the first time I heard about Sillage was on TikTok. A lot of these finds are going to be algorithmic. Unfortunately, you have to feed the algorithm to get out what you want, so that is one of the main tools I have used to figure all this stuff out. The next person is Satoshi Kawamoto. I found his stuff on TikTok originally. Now I follow him on Instagram as well. I think his fit checks are like some of the best out there. I love that he's very consistent. His personal style is super recognizable, but it's also very functional. I think he's an artist. He works with plants. He also sells some clothes on his website if you're interested in that, but definitely a person to watch. This next account is on the smaller side. I don't know much about him. All it says is that he's an office worker from Tokyo, but he has a very considered and expressive style. I like that it's a little bit louder. It's a little bit more colorful. Plus the first guy I talked about, the designer for Sillage, follows him, so he has that stamp of approval. Speaking of, if you're having trouble finding influencers that you like, go to someone you really admire who you think has great taste and see who they follow, and then that's a great resource to find other people. This guy just recently started following. His name is Kazuhiro Yagihashi, and his account is all in Japanese, but through the powers of translation, I see that he works in music and he has an online secondhand clothing store, so he's working on a bunch of different things. I find that he has a little bit more of a classic vintage style. I think his stuff is a little bit more achievable, especially if you only shop secondhand and you don't buy new brands. Another person in that vein is Derek Smith. I think he buys a lot of vintage, he sells vintage, he might be a model. I believe I found him on TikTok, but I also started seeing him on Instagram because he started to make video posts, and his Instagram is worth checking out. This is the last person I want to talk about. I think she does an amazing minimalist UK style. What I really like about her content is she tells you every brand. She has a Substack that's very informative, and all of her stuff is very simple, very functional. I actually found her on Threads. I've been using Threads a little bit. I don't love it, but I found her on there and I'm glad I did. In terms of brands, I really like Nanamika. They have both a Kobe and a New York account. Plus, Margaret Howell has a great account, specifically the Japanese one. I want to shout out two of my mutuals. I think it was Elliot Dupree who put me on MHL. He mentioned a pair of jeans that he has from them, which I really liked. The other person is Elena or El Lorenzi. She has been working at Nanamika for a long time, and that's how I originally found out about that brand. Finally, I want to shout out the Kluel Instagram accounts, both the main one and Kluel. I like the way they post a lot, honestly, more than Popeye. Popeye's Instagram account is just okay. It doesn't give me anything that I'm really excited about, especially since I don't read Japanese. For me, that's sort of the hard and easy thing about inspiration is that it's everywhere. It's on TikTok, it's on Instagram, it's on Threads, it's on the streets, it's in magazines. So it's sort of pervasive, but it's also hard to like hold on to it because it's fleeting. You're like, oh, I liked that thing. Where was it? Who was it that I saw it on? How do I figure out what that item was? How do I buy it myself, etc.? That's something I also want to talk about. So obviously following people is a great first step. The other thing is on TikTok, they have the add to favorites option. Then you can create collections. I love creating collections, but that can still feel a little bit messy, but it's a great first step. On Instagram, you can save things and then you can also sort them into little collections. So that's a great way to do things. I personally like to screenshot things. I don't know why. That way, if you do screenshot something, it's sort of all in one place because then you can save stuff from TikTok, you can save it from Instagram, you can save it from Pinterest, and then it's all in one place in your phone. Then depending on what app you use, you can add things to specific albums, like inspiration albums. Google Photos also has great search functions, so you can look up striped shirt and find every picture of someone wearing a striped shirt. It really does work pretty well. Besides Instagram and TikTok, the other thing I really want to talk about is Pinterest. I spent many years of my life refusing to use Pinterest. I didn't get it. I was always a Tumblr girl, and I was very focused on my Tumblr as a way to organize inspiration. I think I used the tagged systems. I can link my Tumblr down below if you guys want to go through that memory lane, but I was very focused on my tags to organize inspiration on Tumblr. Pinterest, I literally started using maybe a couple of months ago, a year ago at most. And at first I was so confused because there's so many ads on Pinterest that I was like, how is this a usable platform? But eventually you sort of train the algorithm to find stuff that you like, and you can sort of glaze over the ads. Your eye does a pretty good job of sort of skipping over them. And once you save pins, you can look through all your pins and then there's, no ads. One nice thing about Pinterest, which I haven't really used because I think it can be a little sketchy, but if you click on an item, they will show you how to buy that item. Like if you see a jacket you like, you will click on it and they use whatever technology that they have to find pictures of that jacket that are for sale at certain brands. The brands they choose, who's to say about the quality of them, but you can go that route. Sorry, I'm just looking through my Tumblr account, all the stuff that I did like #fashion. There's good stuff in here. A lot of the stuff I would still wear. A couple of other sources of inspiration that I want to shout out are, again, physical magazines, going to a store and buying physical magazines. We have a lot of magazine shops here in New York City. A lot of the smaller, more independent magazines these days, I think, don't go to print. They're just online. But you can find some more experimental stuff, some more indie stuff there. My favorites at the moment, of course, are Popeye, Kluel, and Fudge. These are Japanese magazines, so they are, at least for me, purely visual. Popeye, of course, is the City Boy magazine. They focus mostly on menswear, but they will have both. Kluel has their main one, plus Kluel which is specifically for menswear, and then Fudge is traditionally a more feminine magazine. They also have men's Fudge. The one thing I would say about these magazines is there is weirdly a lot of white models. They do have some diversity, but it's like white people and then black people and then Asian people maybe. And I'm sure that says a lot. I mean, obviously a lot of it is Japanese Americana, it's a Western style. So maybe that's why they're focusing on it. Maybe they think that's what their readers like. It's a little bit funny to us, I think, as a Western audience to be looking at a Japanese magazine where there are a lot of white people in it. But if anyone knows more about that history or the reason for that, I would love to know more. I also have to say that one of my main points of inspiration is what I see people wearing outside. Now, I don't live in Manhattan. I don't live in Williamsburg. I live in a little bit more of an auxiliary Brooklyn neighborhood, but I love the way people dress in my neighborhood specifically because it's not a super trendy neighborhood, but I find that people dress really well and in a way that seems really personal to them, and that, there is nothing better. Unfortunately, that source of inspiration is probably the hardest one to sort of like categorize, to keep, to use later. I think one time I saw a guy with a baseball cap on the subway and I was so obsessed with it that I figured out what it was. Like I didn't take a picture of him. I just Googled so many times to figure out what the hat was and I actually found it and I bought it. I'll show you what the hat is. It's just the Ebbets Field version of the New York Yankees baseball cap. It's just that, everyone in New York wears a New York Yankees baseball cap. I mean, people across the world wear New York Yankees baseball caps, and I did really want one, even though I am a Phillies fan. I love the look of them. This one I saw and I was like, oh, it's a little different. That's me. I have to be a little different. And now, of course, I know that the Ebbets Field style of baseball caps is very popular and already well known, but I literally did not know about it until I saw a guy wearing this hat on the subway, and I researched to figure out what it was. Now I'm going to talk about a little bit of the nerdier side of what I do in order to organize myself. We've talked about saving things on social media. We've talked about making albums in your phone by screenshotting things. What I have done in the past couple of months is I've made a master shopping Google sheet. It has 8 different tabs. One is modern brands, one is things I look up secondhand, one is my favorite designers, one is where I buy underwear, where I buy home items, one is specific marketplaces, one is New York City stores I like IRL, and the last one is my favorite reseller sites and what I like to use them for. So it's very comprehensive, and essentially I started making it because I was just getting a lot of questions about these things. Plus, you go through your life and you enjoy something or you don't enjoy something, and you don't want to have to repeat that experience over and over again. I realized I had gone to a shop that I really liked and then couldn't remember where it was or couldn't remember what it was called, or I went to a shop and I actually didn't like it, and then I still had it saved on my Google Maps or whatever, so I went back and I was like, oh, I don't like this store. Why did I come back here? So just as a way to not have to repeat bad experiences or feel like I'm rediscovering good experiences, I wanted to write it all down, and that is what I have done. Speaking of Google Maps, this is not normal. I accept that. I understand that. Most people don't do this. Most people don't have the time or the interest or the energy, whatever. This is just the way my brain works. I have a compulsive need to not remember things because essentially when my brain is scared that I'm going to forget things, it reminds me constantly when I'm trying to go to sleep, when I'm doing something else. My brain is like, remember this, don't forget this. If I write it down, my brain stops like pinging me with that information. So that helps me personally. This is just how I work. This isn't for everyone, or it could be for you, or it could be for a lot of you. Who knows? I have different lists. One is for food, one is for nightlife, one is for shopping, one is specifically for secondhand stores. And essentially, I think what's most useful about having them in your Google Maps app is that when you're in that area, say you have 30 minutes to kill, or you're looking for something to eat, you can see what's around you, what you've already been to, or what you've heard about that is good that you want to check out. I have sort of a separate connotation for things I haven't been to, but that I would like to go to. That's in my want to go. And so I use that fairly often. I haven't really done this, but you can also write little notes about a store. So you can be like, oh, I want to check this out because I heard there are good jeans here. Or, oh, this wasn't good for jewelry, but it was good for something else. Stuff like that. There are a couple of stores in here that I haven't gone to yet that I would really like to, actually. And this one I didn't like that much. I'm unsaving it. Goodbye. So we have organized our inspiration. We have organized where we like to shop. The last piece for me is having a wish list. So just on my Notes app, whatever Notes app you like to use. I just use the normal Apple one. I have a note called, what is it called? Shopping list, which honestly is confusing. I should rename that because sometimes I think it's my grocery shopping list. It's not. It's my clothing shopping list. What is currently on my shopping list? A slouchy plain gray sweater. I'm still struggling to find just a plain gray sweater somehow. A dark denim jacket. The one I wear is technically my partner's. I would like my own. A baby tee in navy. Why are these so boring? A plaid patterned wool coat. That's a little bit more exciting. Nicer sandals. I kind of did find a pair of nicer sandals, but they're not that comfortable. But I'm also kind of just over buying sandals and then realizing that they're not that comfortable and I just don't want to buy sandals anymore. I'm over it. Brown bag, ? I guess I'm still wondering if I want a brown bag. I have a lot of tan bags that I've been wearing a lot, but I think I've also been wearing a lot of trench coats, which are a tan color, and I think a brown bag might help with the trench coat. So I guess that's why there's a ? Interesting flannel. What makes a flannel interesting? Good question. Don't know. Yellow lens sunglasses. I like sunglasses. I'm worried about losing them, which is kind of why I don't buy them. I don't want to spend money on something that I'm so sure I'm going to lose. On the other hand, I have a pair of sunglasses from Warby Parker that I've had for years and haven't lost. So maybe I've grown out of losing things. I know for a fact that's not true. I lose everything. Bandanas. As much as I've been talking about bandanas, I do not own any. I own a lot of little silk scarves, but no bandanas, so that's on my list. Comfy sneakers. I actually just bought a pair of comfy sneakers, so that can come off. Khakis. I bought my khaki pants. Army pants. I bought those. And tote bag. I bought that. Wow, look at that. The shopping list has grown smaller. Some of these have been on here for a long time. Because I'm such a thrift shopper, this list helps me when I'm going into a thrift store. If I don't have time to go through every single item, every single rack, I can be like, okay, what am I specifically looking for? I will look through the gray sweaters. Honestly, there usually aren't that many gray sweaters to look through, and I'm pretty disappointed in a very short amount of time. The other thing I do is a lot of wish lists. I use my eBay wish list. I save things on Vestiaire. I save things on Grailed. A great thing to do is just to save them and just watch the price come down slowly because the price usually does come down. Or on eBay, they send you an offer. Right now, I'm on a no buy because I have gotten a pay cut. So it's not like I'm trying to buy less clothing. Like I literally can't afford it right now. And in some ways that has been really nice. It's kind of quieted a part of my brain that's always thinking about what I want to buy next because I'm just not buying anything. So all this stuff is sort of on pause. I kind of need to turn off some of my notifications because I keep on getting stuff from Grailed being like, this is dropped in price. This is dropped in price. And I'm like, there's no price that is low enough unless it's free. So That's a thing to keep in mind. Those notifications can cause a little bit of overbuying because you're like, oh, it's cheaper now, I'll buy it. And it sometimes can feel a little bit more like triggering because you're like, oh, okay, I'll buy it. And you don't necessarily always want to fill your brain with that sort of noise. But my eBay wish list I also find can be really helpful. I have had stuff that I put on my eBay wish list and then let it sit there for months, maybe even a year, and then bought it later and really loved it because I spent the time considering that item, waiting to see if I still wanted it, if it still spoke to me, and then buying it. I find that I really like those pieces the most. I think part of the reason eBay is my favorite app to buy things on is because it's so comprehensive. There's so many ways to search for things. There's so many ways to save things. So you can create lists on eBay within your watch list. You could create a list of all shoes. You could create a list of like brown sandals. You can be very specific. That way you can price compare. You can look through what you like the most. And I just think it's an amazing organizational tool within itself. I think the last part of the process for me actually is the documentation of my outfits. That way, when you look through the album, you know what you're wearing, you know what you're liking. That can inform future decisions about either gathering inspo or what you want to buy. And it can also make you edit your wardrobe because you know for a fact that you're not wearing some of the things you have. That is it. Thank you so much for watching. Of course, I'd love to hear about what you guys use, the accounts you love, the organizational tools you love. That's sort of my bread and butter, so I'd love to hear about it.